And welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and excited to be joining you here today. Kicking off a little earlier today, got a big week lined up. Our guy Anthony Schlegel, talked about last week. He's going on vacation with his son. His son is graduating high school, so Schlegel's going to take him out there. They're going on a cruise, and was like, "Hey, I'm not going to be around the rest of the week at all." I'm like, "Well, that's great, Buckeyes. Appreciate you." With that, though, that creates some unique challenges for me. Nobody wants to sit here and just listen to me talk all this time. So I've got a pretty good cavalcade of guests lined up. We have a lot of big news, but we always have Bill Bender. We got our guy, AJ. We're going to move him back to Thursday just because he's got a lot going on. We've got Joshua Perry. I think we're going to try to get Jeremy Birmingham of Rivals as well. And on 3 to talk about all the recruiting wrap up and everything that's going to be going on there. So a huge week from that standpoint. And, as we always do these shows, we do them for the folks. Want to make sure that you guys are getting all your questions answered out there. Everything that ultimately happens, we want to make sure that we can help you and get your questions answered so that you can be the most knowledgeable Buckeye fans around. And so that's ultimately our goal as we move forward and try to get all this done. So we thank you for all that support moving forward with this. But there was some huge news on Friday night, stuff that's going to change the face of college football and really of college athletics as we know it. If you sit there and look and you see ultimately what happened, the House settlement was ultimately passed. And so that's a big deal, because when you sit here and try to figure out exactly, what's the future is going to look like in college football, how it's going to be sculpted, the House settlement is going to be the groundwork for that. And so Dan Murphy put out an article on ESPN. Judge Claudia Wilkin finally approved it. She said the deal would create groundbreaking changes to NCAA rules in governing student-athlete compensation. So by boiling it down, this is a situation we've talked about a ton. And they've tried to find resolution to it. They've tried to find a solution. And finally, after people thought it was going to be, I think, back in April and then in May. And so now we're finally to mid-June after the back and forth of the attorneys, because that's what all of this comes down to, the battles in the courtroom, the battle for the lawyers. They finally, I think, were able to get something there to the finish line and get it figured out. And so Claudia Wilkin stamped the ruling, and I didn't even know this. Like, I learned this from talking to Ross Bjork and some other folks out there that she's I think retired basically. This was her swan song, and this was what she had been waiting on to put together the whole time. And this was her going to be her final case. So the ruling, the back and the forth, and everything else. But starting in July 1st, so they waited about as long as you could. Each school is going to be allowed, but not required, to spend the $20.5 million to pay their athletes. So the school will be able to have their NIL likeness and partner with them and compensate them. And this is part of the revenue sharing. And that is basically 22% on the average annual revenue that FBS level schools get from their ticket sales, broadcast rights, and a few other items. It's basically like a salary cap in the NFL. So you get 22% of that. That number is going to grow on a regular basis during the 10-year lifespan. Sports economist Daniel Rasher was the subject matter expert used in this process. So he's the one that created all the numbers for this. And they think by the end of this 10-year deal, it'll ultimately grow to $30 million that they'll be splitting. Each school can decide how they want to split it up. What do you want to give it to? Do you want to give it to men's basketball, women's basketball, football, softball, baseball, lacrosse, men or women's, whatever it is, whatever sports you have? And really, you are what you emphasize. And so obviously football, the lion's share of the money at most 95% of schools comes from football. There are some that basketball is the breadwinner there. But most of that, as I said, they will spend an overwhelming majority, up to 90% of their money on football and men's basketball players. So people start talking does that open up Title IX? There are Title IX issues with that. Well, maybe. That's something that they're trying to figure out. And, the Supreme Court has ruled on this a couple different ways, looking back and forth of how it ultimately looks. Apologize, I had text come in from Trust there with some different things that we got going on. So I'll keep you up to date about that. But does it open up to Title IX? Now, the Supreme Court has ruled, obviously Title IX is impacted by them. They're the ones that kind of adjudicate that. But then they also have lobbied for the name, image, and likeness, and players and student athletes, let's call them players, their ability to receive their full utility from their value. And so those two things, like with Title IX, don't always work because the majority of the money is raised by men's football and basketball, or football and men's basketball. Now, that's not to say there's other schools where you have big time softball programs. Sometimes there's baseball involved. Sometimes the women's hoops. Most notably, you watch with Caitlin Clark and what she was able to do and how big of a deal that was. But schools are going to choose how to spend this. But I'm guessing 90% of the money, and that's what Dan Murphy's talking about in this article, 90% of the money is most likely going to be going to men's football and basketball. So they're going to start as well. That's coming from the revenue share. And I know we've talked about this, but I want to make sure we're outlining all of it. Creates a new set of rules. There's going to be a college sports commission that's going to try to prevent the current NIL system now, where there is some legitimate name, image, and likeness opportunities where you see guys who JT Tuimoloau, I think, had a Head and Shoulders deal at Ohio State. You see different deals that are coming in and guys being able to partner with companies, things like that. But there is also a certain degree where, like, hey, we're just going to pay you X number of dollars from booster A or X number of dollars from booster B. And that's going to be your NIL as well. And so what this College Sports Commission is going to try to stop these boosters from making those additional payments that aren't official NIL. And so what that is, there's going to be a third-party accounting firm, consulting. Deloitte's going to be, I believe, overseeing it. And anything over $600, that's a name, image, likeness, that has to go through this clearinghouse. They said it's supposed to only take a couple of weeks because that's the other problem with the NCAA. This stuff drags on and drags on. It's supposed to only take a couple of weeks, and they will approve it or say, no, it's too much. You need to go back and reassess it. And saying, this is this player's value. This is what this deal looks like. This is the market size. And this is what you should functionally probably be able to get. And those things are like, it's not terribly hard to be able to find that information out, because now with the internet, you can see everything that they have out there and what that ultimately looks like. So that's going to be the job of the College Sports Commission, is basically they'll have the revenue share that's coming from the schools, and then they'll have really what they're hoping is like real name, image, and likeness stuff, and trying to stop the boosters from just straight up paying guys outside of the cap limits. And if you're Jeremiah Smith, like, hey, you're going to get X number of dollars from Ohio State to school, but you're a great player, best receiver in college football, probably a Heisman Trophy candidate. Your name, image, and likeness value is going to be really high because of how good you are, and you're at a big school. No different than Arch Manning at Texas, where you start talking about, some of the different players, the big-time quarterbacks at big state U, like Nussmeier down at LSU. Like, those guys are going to have big name, image, and likeness opportunities because you're a quarterback at a big-time program. So that's how it was supposed to work at the beginning. Now, he outlines this in the new legal challenges. Trying to adjudicate that is going to be tough, because the contracts that, as Dan Murphy goes on to say, the contracts that the athletes are now signing with their schools will likely bolster the ongoing legal arguments on how they should be considered employees. If you have a contract you signed before that rolls into here that is just straight payment from booster, like, how does that ultimately look? I don't know. They've got to figure that out. But the College Sports Commission attempt to stifle the deals and determining what true market value is. I do over Ohio State. I teach finance and I was economics major. Like, this is trying to find true market value it's easier than it was before, but it's still hard. that a little bit later as well as what that looks like, and how all that ultimately plays out. But there's just a lot of things that we've got to be digesting right now. And I know, seeing in the chat, we got some good action here about the Michigan ruling. Also of note this weekend, Michigan went before the Committee on Infractions. Nothing was really released. Michigan didn't issue a statement. Connor Stallions was apparently there. So we'll have to see what that looks like, and we'll talk about that. But this House settlement on like the grandiose stage was really what I think everybody was kind of looking forward to seeing, and seeing how all that looked and how it came out. And so there's still a lot of challenges. NCAA's next steps. What's Charlie Baker going to do? They're still lobbying Congress. They still want laws, that won't force the athletes from becoming employees. I honestly, though, folks, I'm going to tell you right now, I know people hate that. Like, you're getting paid from your school. Let's just call it what it is. And then you can have some sort of, whether you call it a union or a work association, whatever it is, then you can have rules that govern it. Everybody agrees to them, and it'll clean a lot of this up. And there won't be a lot of lawsuits. There won't be a lot of ambiguity that's cruising around there. And so they're trying to figure all this stuff out. And they've tried the talks about union and other things to like a semi-professional model. I don't know if we need that. The Sedona Prince, who was the lead plaintiff for one of the lawsuits that ultimately led to this, because I think it was like 2 or 3 lawsuits that came together, said that, told ESPN that she hopes that this paves a new way for athletes, just walked into a new world for it. It's a guideline for us to build and add in the future. We needed this as a foundation. Now we're being treated like semi-pro athletes. There are a lot of concerns going forward about the improvement of player health, player representation, the decision-making. And so while it did solve some problems, it did open up a lot of more, a number of more. So we'll be monitoring this throughout the week. I know there'll be a lot of articles written. There'll be a lot of legal deep dives down into this. And so we'll try to figure all of that out for you. We'll try to keep you updated on the Michigan settlement, or Michigan penalties potentially, and what that looks like as they met with the committee infractions. But coming up next, a good friend of mine, former teammate of mine with the Dallas Cowboys, a guy who I have immense respect for. You can hear him on 700 WLW on Cincinnati. You can also see him calling college football games all across the ESPN networks. My guy Rocky Boiman is going to be joining us next. First, parents, athletes, protect what matters most with Export mouth guards, trusted by professional athletes and designed by NHL team dentists. Export mouth guards are scientifically tested to help absorb those high-impact hits, protecting both your teeth and your brain. Export mouth guards feature 3 layers of advanced protection, including a patented use of carbon fiber. They custom 3D print that bad boy right to your grill for more protection, better performance, max comfort, clear communication, so you can focus on your game, not on your gear. Do not take chances with your safety. Visit exportguards.com/Bobby and save 15% on your order. Export, protect what matters most. Rocky Boiman coming up next.
Creative, experience, results. That's what drives growth. That's what builds brands. That's Lake Spur Marketing, a full-service agency built on trust, strategy, and performance, not fluff. From bold strategies to flawless execution, every campaign is rooted in smart planning and driven by clear goals. We don't chase clicks. We build partnerships. We show up, dig in, and deliver every single time. Lake Spur Marketing. The proof is in our partners.
Welcome back in the Bobby Carpenter Show, and I got my guy Rocky Boiman, who's getting ready to join us here. Oh goodness, there he is, big guns. Rocky, probably 2 of the fairest and redhead dudes you're going to find here on any single show, anywhere online. And Rocky, I mean, I know you heard me talking a little bit probably about that House settlement, the stuff coming out. You were a guy, you went to Notre Dame, played there, Cincinnati guy. You've seen a lot of this. You're around college football, covering it and seeing it all. Like, finally this getting done, I think, is a good thing. But what do you kind of see now as we move forward come July 1st?
Yeah, and thanks for having me, Bobby. Yeah, and I'm still kind of sorting through everything just as you and everyone else is. But you kind of, it solves some problems. I think it'll rein in some of the craziness and essentially the buying of players that was happening, but I think it creates a lot of other issues. I mean, what if you're look, some of these players are going to be taking pay cuts, right? Like, how do you explain to some of the top guys in college football, we can't pay you $4 million. We can only pay you $2 million because we got to save some money to pay for this player. And, and then, what about the schools like a Florida that has a top football program and a top basketball program? That money's got to be divvied out, the $20.5 million for all sports. And most of that will go to basketball and to football, obviously, football being first and foremost. But it's almost like if you're Penn State, I don't know how good their basketball team is, but I imagine that they're probably in a better spot than, again, say a Florida, where Florida basketball is one of the top programs in the country. So they're going to take a lot of those resources. So what are those conversations between the athletic directors and the coaches and the student athletes themselves? And I am also interested, Bobby, and I heard you discuss in a little bit, this is supposed to take care of what I just said, the paying of the players. And I guess any NIL deals above $600, some committee is going to look into it. Now, as well as I do, there's some workarounds with that. So I'd be interested to see what happens in that regard. But yeah, I think some football programs are going to try to find ways to get more money and legally and flow it into these players, because it's kind of, look, Ohio State's roster last year was $22 million, right? So that's already over the 20.5, and that's just football. So interesting to see how things move forward and what creative ways, and I do think it'll happen, what creative ways the athletic directors and the coaches can try to appease some of these other pay the player issues.
I love football, Rock, but there's a lot of other sports there that we see too. And do you see this impacting the non-revenue sports? I know, like, Ohio State's got 36, and they've talked about it, and Notre Dame's got a ton. I mean, a lot of the schools up in the northern corridor, I mean, they've got 25 plus sports. And do you see this impacting those in a negative way? I mean, as far as, do we see the elimination of some of these programs at different schools?
100%, and it's very unfortunate. And I remember saying this on radio on my show in like 2016. I'm like, all the paying of the athletes, there's only a certain amount of money in the pot, and the first things that are going to get cut are the kind of the peripheral sports, the rowing team and the gymnastics team and maybe even, unfortunately, the softball team. And I think it's going to happen. I saw some online, Bobby, is saying there could be upwards of 5,000 athletes across the entire NCAA that essentially get cut off of programs because they just don't have the revenue to be able to withstand it and pay the money to support it. So I think that's very unfortunate, because there's other sports. Obviously, they're enjoyed by parents. They're enjoyed by student athletes. They're enjoyed by just fans, right? There might be a smaller fan base for a softball team, but it's enjoyed by some people, a good amount of people. So what happens there, I think it's going to be tough. There's going to be some hard conversations going on in a lot of these schools. You mentioned Ohio State. They're one of the top programs in the entire country in terms of amount of sports. So I think, unfortunately, at a school like Ohio State and others, you're going to see some sports get cut.
What's wild is, like you said, everybody wanted this, and it's amazing, Rock. And I think guys should get compensated, but people have been pushing the envelope, pushing this. And I think it's going to be some of the same people now who wanted the players all to get paid, get max value, and that's fine. And listen, it's America, and I respect that. But I said also it's going to come at the expense of this. And now when there's the harsh reality of the other side of it, I don't know if people clearly thought through all the ramifications. And like even some of the stuff, when you talk to name, image, and likeness, it's like, oh, that's great. You play football or basketball at this school or whatever sport, and you want to be endorsed by, local car dealer or whatever it might be. I don't think anybody thought about like just the legitimate paying of players by boosters. And so these unintended consequences, I don't know if they were clearly thought through by everybody involved.
No, I agree. I mean, and that was, to me, I always said this, that the nature of the NIL and the paying of the players discussion always seemed to me, and again, coming from someone who didn't get paid, and you didn't get paid, at least I don't think so, Bobby.
No money here, man.
It was like, no, but it was like, oh, these guys, they put on this work, And, after the game, they don't have enough money to take their girlfriend out to buy a cheeseburger after the game, right? Well, then all of a sudden it went from, okay, a couple of, spending bucks in a guy's pocket to, millions of dollars. It went from 0 to 1,000. And now they're, almost going from 1,000 trying to get back to like 100. And so either way you do it, there's going to be some ramifications. But yeah, the non-revenue generating sports, which for practically every school, football turns a profit, basketball in a couple places, everything else, every other sport costs money. So if it's already costing you money and there's only a limited amount of money to pay the players that you need to get to compete in the revenue generating sports, I think they're going to take a hit.
So, Rock, this is the only money I ever got paid in college. I didn't get paid till 2016. It was my Alford case or Alston settlement. I kept that check. I put it right up there in my right by my diploma. I was like, these are the things I got while I was at Ohio State. It's about $1,500. I was like, you know what? This is going to be good. This will be good to like have a nice dinner with like my whole family. We'll go do something and do it up nice on like a holiday or whatever it is. But
Nice.
I put it back there in my diploma, and I tell people like, this is what I earned while I was at school. I got a degree.
Right.
I got $1,500. And honestly, it's interesting because now the NIL and social media and everything has opened up a lot of opportunities, but these guys are basically like professional athletes. And I want to ask you this because, I remember going to Notre Dame and visiting there, and you were a senior or a rising senior, and, they obviously one of the better players playing in the NFL for, 8-9 years. And I said, I don't know if I would have, the money's great, but I don't know if I would have changed and traded the money for the restrictions that come with, I guess, what they're like how you have to live in college. Because I got to have a really good time. And some of the things I did, I don't know if I would have wanted anybody else to know about. And the fact that these guys are now under a microscope, I honestly don't know if there's a price that I would have put on that.
Yeah, I guess the only counter to that, Bobby, would be these players are going to be under a microscope now, regardless. Just because the nature of social media, and everybody carries a camera and a camcorder in their pocket at all times. So there's more stuff. There's more, kind of, some of the good-natured fun that maybe you and I used to have. That stuff is unfortunately going to get out there. Here's one question to talk about. So I heard you discussing it because they will allow true NIL to happen, right? But in my opinion, how many college athletes, Bobby, have true return on investment, like have a name? I would say Arch Manning. I'm talking nationally. Now, within, and you mentioned Jeremiah Smith, I think around Ohio State, he's got a name people know, but I don't think if you go out to California, especially, average or casual or non-football fans don't know. So I wonder how much true NIL. I think it'll certainly be regional. I can't see it being a national thing other than like maybe an Arch Manning.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to be a guy that either like Arch Manning has a famous family. You got to be at a big school, and there's got to be some other tie, and other than just being a really good football player. And maybe this keeps guys in school a little longer. You can stay an extra year. You can we've seen this all with Cam Ward and some of the decisions that guys made. And, it's amazing is that Quinn Ewers, was a 6th, 7th round draft pick. I mean, he probably could have went and played somewhere else and made like $5, $6, $7 million is what was reported if he wanted to come back. And I kind of respect him for saying, hey, I played at Texas. This is what I did. And this is what I have moving forward. But it's a much different world. Because like you said, regionally it matters. So if you have to play at a school where people legitimately care regionally about what you're doing.
Yeah. No, it absolutely. So, and I think that's a good thing. I think that kind of goes back to the nature of what I thought paying the players would look like. And that was, there's a local car dealer. He wants to pay a player $2,500 to come sign autographs for 2 hours. That sounds reasonable. I'm perfectly fine with that. But then it somehow spiraled into collectives and essentially boosters buying players. But I guess we're gonna go back to going away from that. But as I said at the start, Bobby, I'm very interested to see the little loopholes and the little things that these clever universities that want to win games. What are the ways they can get around maybe some of that and make it look good enough to a court to be allowed to pay some of these guys outside of the 20.5 million.
Do you think it would be easier if they just called them employees? Like they just got over the fact that they didn't want to name them employees? Because it's really no different than like a graduate student working on a PhD and they're getting paid by the school while they're doing that.
Yeah, I think it would, but this is where players gotta make a decision of what they want to be. Are they employees or are they student athletes? Because I see players wanting their cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
You know, they want to be, we want to get paid. We want to do all that. But then when it comes time to, hey, Johnny, you've been here 2 years and you haven't really gotten on the field. So you got to go. Whoa, I'm a student athlete. My scholarship should be good. So I think if it truly is a business type model, I think, and I know there's kind of ways of doing it now, but yeah, I think you're going to start to see a point where guys, look, it ain't working out, you're cut, your scholarship's gone, and we're going to find somebody else. And that's, I guess, the other side of the you're an employee thing. There's consequences. If you don't have a good radio show, they find somebody else, right? That's the nature of being a true employee versus a student athlete.
Well, it's like in the NFL when you have a rough game, maybe on Sunday, you walk by and Tuesday they're working dudes out of your position and you can see it.
Oh, I've been there. I know you've been there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's the reality, man. And that's going to happen. And again, some of these kids are like, well, wait a minute. I thought we were here to promote the university and this and that. Nope, you're an employee now. So,
all right, we're going to take a quick break for about a minute, Rock. Then we're going to talk some real football here coming up next on the show. All right, back here with our guy Rocky Boiman on the show, and now we've talked a lot of NIL and all this legal nonsense. Looking, mid-June here, Rock, and I always say once you pass the 4th of July, all of a sudden, then like you're back into football season. First year of a 12-team playoff, I think largely it was pretty successful. People enjoyed it. It was a fun time. They're kicking around some different models and everything, and we'll save that for another day, another show, and another day. But when you start looking at this, and I know you dive in and cover a lot of these teams and break them all down, who do you like in this 2025 year?
I think you like Penn State just because they did what Ohio State did last year. Was they had a lot of guys, Mecca Ibuka couldn't have gone out. He could have went in the NFL draft last year. Travion Henderson, could have went somewhere else or gone to the NFL. But a lot of those guys came back, and then they brought Will Howard in, and so a lot of the kind of the guys with experience and great players stayed. You could argue Michigan did that the year before. Penn State's done the same thing. They bring back Drew Aller, Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, both the running backs. The defensive end, Dennis Sutton, they'll bring him back. So they got guys that seemingly, like Ohio State did last year, said, look, we got a special group here. Instead of being selfish and doing our NFL journey, let's put that off one more year and come back and try to win this thing. So I think that's the story of, in terms of teams that are in that top echelon there to maybe win the whole thing. It's Penn State. And then from there, so they got the players. They went in the portal and got wide receivers, which they desperately needed, right? And that playoff game against Notre Dame, no wide receiver had a catch. Seemingly on paper, they fixed that. Now it's just, can Penn State win a big game? I think they play Oregon early in the season, if I recall, on their schedule. And so I think they're I would say the front runner right now, them along with Texas, but seeing if Penn State, maybe this is their year.
Someone in the chat threw up a question about, are you excited of your alma mater and their future with Marcus Freeman and kind of what he's looked like in his first couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's, tremendous, season last year. I mean, if you had told me, I think I'd said on your show before, you had told me in whatever that was, early September, you lose to Northern Illinois at home. Not only would Marcus Freeman get a contract extension, but they would go to the national title game. There's no way, right? But he found a way to circle the wagons and I mean, really played some dominant football
Yeah.
in the playoff. I mean, they beat Indiana's brains in. They beat Georgia up, beat them on the line of scrimmage. I mean, and we're a whisker away in some regards against Ohio State. So I think I think they can keep it going because Marcus Freeman can recruit. And I think CJ Carr, you're expecting a lot out of him coming in as a first-year quarterback. So yeah, I think, and look, they got a schedule that lines up. Their schedule, I don't have it in front of me, but I think they open with Texas A&M. You win that game. And I think an early game against Miami, it looks pretty good. You win that opening game against A&M, you could run the table and find yourself right back in it, just like you were last year.
How when you heard that USC and that rivalry might be going on hiatus or potentially fading off, from a guy who played in it, what does that mean? Like, how does that hit for you?
Yeah, because people always ask me, what was your biggest rivalry game in college? It was definitely USC. Like, I mean, that game had a different feel to it. All 4 years we played them, and every year they would bring up the stories about back in the 20s, and Newt Rockne would, put the players on a train, and they'd travel west, and the train would stop, and they'd get off and practice like in the rocks and the grass, and they'd get back on the train and drive. There's some of those old stories, right? It was awesome. And, then Coach Davey playing the USC fight song over and over and over and over. So, yeah, that was a big and by the way, that was Carson Palmer and some of those great players they had back then that we played against. But, I hope they find a way to keep it. I understand a little bit from USC's perspective. They're like, look, we're in the Big Ten. We play a pretty good schedule, and do we need that game? I would say they do, because the Big Ten is still pretty top heavy. It's Ohio State, it's Penn State, Michigan, and then there's a little bit of a drop off. I don't think it's as deep at the top end as the SEC is. So I would think they would need a Notre Dame, or would want a Notre Dame, a big time national game to be able to put on their resume. So I think they should think twice about that, about getting rid of that rivalry game. I know Notre Dame wants it. That's obviously a great opportunity for Notre Dame to go west and recruit California and do all that sort of thing. I hope it stays. I know USC doesn't want to. I disagree with their thought process on it, but I guess we shall see.
Listen, I disagree with the thought process too. Like, I hate this stuff moving away and, conference realignment and everything else, because that's a game, like you said, Rock, that you grew up watching, I grew up watching. It's a fun game. There's a lot of history to it, recent and past. And those are the things they've got to find a way, obviously, to make it work. And I think you can. People just have to be ultimately committed to it. Kind of one last thing.
One just to add on what you said, that was a good point, Bobby, just about, people wanting that rivalry. I think what's changed and in a way hurt college football a little bit is, and maybe it'll change a little bit now with the new INL rolling, but with the transfer portal and players going around, like the average fan goes, where you used to go, okay, man, we got a good group of sophomores coming back, and we got a junior wide receiver who's a stud. He's coming back. Well, now you don't know. So year to year, I'm an alumni. I went to, say USC, and, I'm for USC, but I kind of don't know these guys. Okay, well, at least we got the rivalry games. Well, now you don't get the rivalry games too. It's just a lot of change from some of the things that I think college football, frankly, has over the NFL. I mean, you get rivalry games in the NFL, but some of these games in college go back over 100 years, right? That's hard to just kind of, thumb your nose at that sort of thing. So, with so much change and now getting rid of some of the rivalry games, I think, I just wonder how the effect of that is on a fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I know from outside of working in that industry and covering it and doing everything else, like, those are the games that I enjoy. And there's the nostalgia of watching those games with your grandparents, with your dad, your whole family. And that's the stuff that I think keeps people engaging. It's far different than the NFL. And it's not a divisional game you play twice a year. Like, it's a one-off, and that's it.
And I remember talking to a couple coaches about this, but it always sticks in mind talking to Jimbo Fisher. He was then the head coach of Florida State. And this is back in like 2017 or so, right before like the college football playoff was coming into it. And he said, man, I'm telling you, he goes, this whole playoff thing is not going to be good because no one's going to care about some of these games and the bowl games. Like it used to matter who won the Sugar Bowl and and who won the Orange Bowl and all that sort of thing. And I just think this is one more step of getting rid of it. It's all about the playoff. And that's what he kept saying, because no one will care about anything but the playoff. Well, I mean, the fans do. The fans want to see these rivalry games. They want to see Ohio State, Penn State. They want to see USC, Notre Dame. But now these athletic directors' heads are being wired to what gets us in the playoff. Everything else be damned. What gets us in the playoff? And I think it's unfortunate.
All right, last one before we get you out of here. It's been interesting. Watched Michigan win the national championship a couple of years ago, and they're in front of the infractions committee, and we'll see obviously what that looks like in a couple of weeks or month when that all comes out. But they win the national championship. Ohio State wins one, and with that, it's first time 2 Big Ten teams and 2 Northern schools have won it. Notre Dame played Ohio State for it. Penn State was playing Notre Dame in the semifinal. And so for a long time, Rock, and you and I are both from the state of Ohio, and you hear SEC, 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 the fact that maybe with the NIL, and I don't know if it's portal related or whatever, but it seems like there's been a leveling of the water a little bit over these last couple of years as far as talent disbursement.
100%. I mean, and the proof is in the pudding. Everything you just laid out, and I'm sure a lot of people you talk to as well kind of, didn't want to speculate too much, but we're like, basically made the case. Well, now the Big Ten schools can be paid because the SEC was paying the kids all along, right? So that's evened it out. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I think there's certainly something to that. But then back to the settlement, how does that equal things out, or what happens from here in terms of how the SEC and the Big Ten shake out?
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Well, Rock, I appreciate you spending some time with me today. It's always good to catch up.
No Bill Belichick questions. We went through a whole segment.
Okay, here you go. Jordan Hudson. I mean, is she good? Is she good for the game? Is she good for North Carolina? Like, what's Bill doing? I don't know.
She's good for the TV networks, because I know ESPN wants that opening game versus TCU, and I think they'll have a Jordan cam. There'll be a camera right on her the whole time, just to catch her reactions. It's wild, right? I mean, it's a guy who spent 50 years. He started coaching the NFL in 1975, 50 years, and all he knew was the 4 walls of a football facility. And then, after he got let go by the Patriots, it's almost like he got outside and was like, wow, there's like a whole nother world out here. There's stuff other than football. What the hell is going on? This is fantastic. But it's just wild. The guy that seemingly only knew one singular thing, cared about one singular thing for 50 years, now seems to have a little attention somewhere else. But I look at the schedule, though, Bobby. They got a schedule that's set up. They don't. Yeah. I mean, they play Clemson. They don't play Miami. They don't play SMU. They don't play Louisville. He could go around and mess around and win 8-9 games next year. So
I said that he's a good coach. But what's interesting, Rock, being up there my last season, they always had like ignore the noise, manage expectations. Like those were the things that were on the doors, like as you walked out. And for a guy, you said 50 years, wanted nothing to do with the media. I'm like, dude, you're doing things now that are just drawing the spotlight back, which to me is just, it's befuddling because it's so different than what he was.
It's wild, man. But it'll make for a good TV show, and that's all that matters to us, right?
The good news is, Rock, you're a couple years older than me. So when you're 70, dating a 24-year-old, like your Jordan Hudson will be being born in like 10 years. All right. So that'll be a good deal for you. All right.
I break my arm by patting myself on the back if that happens, Bobby. Just kidding. Honey, I love you.
Hey, thank you, sir. Hey, you have a great one, and we'll catch up again soon.
Bobby, you're the best, buddy. Thank you. Great job. See ya.
There's our guy, Rocky Boiman, one of the best. 700 WW. You can hear him in Cincinnati, and you can obviously see him with ESPN as he's calling games and doing a great job. One of my favorites. And the guy who went to Notre Dame, he was like the man there. And that was their pitch to get me there. It didn't quite land, but Rocky obviously was a great salesman. Want to tell you about my friends over at Backer, bckr.com, brand new brand. Premium Buckeye jackets and gear, founded to make better quality fan gear for you. If you want the great stuff, the great gear that looks like, the hunting, the fishing, the skiing gear, all those great things, the sweet golf apparel. And you're like, man, look at that coach. He looks good. This is what you're going to get, the Backer product. It's phenomenal. And a portion of the proceeds when you go to bckr.com goes back to the student athletes. So you're helping fund some of that at Ohio State as well. So go check it out. I've got some, and listen, Father's Day's coming up. It would make a great gift, and when they see it, they will love it. Use promo code all caps Bobby at checkout for free expedited shipping. Again, that's bckrbacker.com. All right, coming up next, we got some headlines and some rough news here coming out of Oregon. They're poised to make a big run. Big time injury could be setting them back. Find out about that next on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
Creative, experience, results. That's what drives growth. That's what builds brands. That's Lake Spur Marketing, a full-service agency built on trust, strategy, and performance, not fluff. From bold strategies to flawless execution, every campaign is rooted in smart planning and driven by clear goals. We don't chase clicks. We build partnerships. We show up, dig in, and deliver every single time. Lake Spur Marketing. The proof is in our partners.
All right, now our headlines are brought by our good friends over at Lake Spur Marketing. Lake Spur Marketing, full service ad agency built on trust, on strategy, on performance, all the things you love. What they do, they have unbelievable experience. Over 100 combined years in the business. They eliminate waste and deliver on budget. Their Lake Spur is going to shield your team from the unwanted, necessary nonsense, the outside noise, the cold callers, and let you do what you do best. Focus on your business, and they'll be the ones to take it to that next level. Don't chase the clicks. They build partnerships. Lake Spur Marketing, the proof is in their partners. Okay. Rough news out of Oregon. You hate to see this, and Dan Lanning's doing a good job up there. They're building a monster, and one of their top returning receivers is believed to have suffered a serious knee injury. I know people always talk about the ACL. ACLs, man, they've got that thing down to a science where it takes a full year before you feel good, but they can usually have you back if you're in good shape and it wasn't anything other than an ACL, and maybe 6 to 9 months, and you can kind of start working through that. So even if you tore it, well, now you would be done. But even if you tore it in the spring, sometimes you can get back and be effective this year. But Evan Stewart is believed to have torn his patellar tendon, which is rough. It's the tendon right below your kneecap. That a lot of times when you're running, you get some soreness there. And if that's the case, they said the recovery time, which I couldn't believe this, if it's like maybe mild, like a real partial tear that they can go in and tighten it up, is more like 3 months. A lot of times on this, I've heard it being more like a 12-month injury. Major loss to one of the top teams in the Big Ten, because he will probably miss the entirety of this season. I can't imagine him at this point in June. We got all June, all July, all of August, September, October. I mean, the thing is, coming off of that, even if you can get healthy, what type of shape are you in? What's your speed like, especially a position like wide receiver where you've got to go out there, and Evan Stewart's is a fleet of foot guy. And so you're going to want to have that juice to be able to get that done. And so I hate seeing this, even though it's the opposition. Like for the player, for me, when you watch a guy get hurt in the summer, and what I would have to imagine is a non-contact injury, unless he did it outside of the football field. That's just it's a lot going on right there, and that he's going to have to deal with. So it's very unfortunate for him. It's unfortunate for the Oregon Ducks. And so I wish him a safe and speedy recovery, and hopefully this does not derail his football career. And so that is the main headline that we have today as well. So we appreciate that. And obviously, I'm glad, hopefully everybody, Buckeyes, listen, my dad always said, make sure you drink lots of water, get lots of sleep, and say your prayers, and so that you are is going to be as healthy as you possibly can be heading into the season, and this Ohio State team will be healthy. All right, that is it for our headlines. Coming up next, we've got our tailgate talk, where we're going to answer your questions. So fire away in the chat. It's just me and you talking. And so we've got a nice, lively chat today. We had a great time with Rocky. Thanks for throwing some in there. You guys want to throw in some more questions? We can get those answered for you here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. And now we've got our tailgate talk brought to you by our friends over at Real Truck. Bring your truck, Jeep, or Bronco to life at realtruck.com, just like this. Oh, gosh. Oh, this is a good question. This is from last week. I'll have to look at this. This is Will Star World coming in from our these are some of the comments that came in and questions from Friday's show with Schlegs. It said, I'm watching this at 12:09 a.m. I love it. It's a great Friday night watch for some of the folks. Get out there, enjoy it, watch it late night. Hopefully it's entertaining for you. Maybe have a couple of cocktails and hang out. So the chat replay is not available. Do you have that function turned off? I am not fully aware of how to turn that function on or off, Will Star. So I'm going to try to get that on there so you can go back and see the old chat because the old chat is live. I'm going to get my best guy, Pat, our producer. He said he'll check it out and try to figure that stuff out moving forward. Had some great questions that came into Rocky, obviously talking about Marcus Freeman. Did he love him? I think he does with what he was able to do. A lot of people are talking about the Michigan punishments. I'll give you a little high level on this right now. What does this look like? What does it ultimately look like? What should it be? Vacating wins, vacating national championship. Like, I don't know what that does. I think it's important. We watched it happen. Did they win the national championship clean? Probably. Had they cheated up to that point? A lot of the time, yeah. Pulling down banners. I mean, it hurts, it stings, but you watch it happen. I think there's a better way to do some of that moving forward. And if you start talking about, because we talked about this, hammered in the cash element, fines, and then maybe, playoff, it's, 12 teams. Like Michigan should be getting in that. If you do want to punish someone, you eliminate their postseason play, make a postseason ban with the transfer portal. I mean, you can get guys slipping in there and getting out. And so that would hurt the program. You have to begin to rebuild that thing from scratch. And so we'll get into a little bit more of that as the week goes on of what that looks like. And hopefully there'll be some more information. Like I said, Michigan did not issue a statement. It was reported the Connor Stallions was there. And we'll see kind of NCAA when they come down with this, hopefully in the next, 2 to 6 weeks. I think it could be as much as 2 months, but we'll see how all that shakes out. But that is our tailgate talk brought to you today by our friends at Real Truck. We've got some suggestions in there and just throw those in the comments as well. We'll talk about that next week. Coming up next, I'll wrap up the show with my parting thoughts and something that was pretty cool with my son over the weekend. Here coming up next. So this coming from Steely Matt saying, Bobby, saw your son get baptized over the weekend. Very cool. So my oldest 2 kids were baptized about 5 years ago. We go to Rock City Church, and my third son made the decision. He just turned 12 in May and made the decision that he wanted to be baptized. And it's going to have my Pastor Chad or Pastor Todd, one of those 2 guys do it very close to me, but had an opportunity to do something cool, and you can start playing this, Pat. Sean Lane, who played with me at Ohio State, was 2 years behind me, is a pastor at Rock City. And to have one of my former teammates baptize my son was pretty darn special, and it was awesome to watch him and his wife do that on Sunday afternoon. And what was really cool, especially about it, Sean, not cool for him. I mean, his last season at Ohio State, I think the last game, he suffered a stinger, which usually is something that's pretty minor, not a big deal. Well, he never regained feeling in his hand again, feeling in his arm, his right arm, he's right-handed. And so it's something he's had to deal with now. And, he's working at our church and one of the campus pastors there. And it was just awesome to see. And so to watch that, it's a proud dad moment. I'm always proud of my kids for the effort they put into things, not necessarily the success, but you make the right choices and then you follow through with them. And that's how winning is done in life. It's not about, the score matters and things, and that's all a big deal. But listen, when you make the right choices and then you follow up and you grind every day and you work at them, that's the stuff I try to teach all my kids. And so that is the big part of that. That is it for today's show. I appreciate the comments and sentiments in there. Tomorrow, I think we're going to have Bill Bender on. Should be a big week. I appreciate you guys getting lively in the chat. Give us some more conversation. My man Schleg's like, he's cruising around. And so, I can go to Guantanamo Bay and do a show, but apparently Anthony Schlegel can't interrupt his vacation. It's all right. He's my buddy. We'll see you tomorrow on the Bobby Carpenter Show.